Thank you, guys. Well, just before we get into the 6 month shearing, the comment on audits being easy, they are easy when you're organised. So having blokes like Gloves organising things is what makes those sorts of things easy. So yes, audits here are now very easy. And just a comment on what Emma was talking about, you know, the relationships we're building with people at every turn that we can, it really is critical, I think, at the level of the wool story. It's a real gap in the relationships across the industry, I think. So it's great that these people are building those stories. And one of the things we've got to tell is an amazing story, and we don't seem to talk about that very much. And so by being able to capture the story of the people and the landscape and the animals and communicate that story right through the long supply chain to the brands, it's a really powerful thing. And it's not so much of a matter of having to sharpen our act or really pull up our socks. It's a matter of just telling the story that is there to be told. So that's a great opportunity, I think, and I think that's a space that the ZQ guys are feeling very well. So thanks, Emma and Matt. That was great. 6 month shearing, and it is a shame that Emma couldn't do it. This is her trial, so I'm more than happy to take you through the results we found here in her absence. But it is a shame she couldn't be here in person to talk us through it. But credit to Emma for pulling this information together. The first question that usually comes up with the 6 month shearing is length. You know, how do we get the length, or what do we do about length, or what sort of length we need? And I think this little diagram sort of puts it into perspective for most people. So our sheep in 12 months were at about 120 mils, so that was too long. And as soon as we get past 90 mils, we're starting to lose value per kilo. So the price is dropping off once we get past 90, as it is if we come shorter of 70. So what we've done in shifting from 12 month shearing at 120 mils, we're cutting it roughly in half, and we're now producing roughly 65 mils in 6 months. So in terms of cents per kilo, we're much closer to that sweet spot in the market between 70 and 90 mils. Instead of being 30 mils long, obviously we're only 5 mils short. So in terms of value for the wool that we're producing, it's actually of higher value, partly because of the length it is, partly because of the tensile strength, which is significantly stronger, and also the vegetable matter. They're all improved by cutting it off at 6 month intervals. So that's really the long and the short of the length story. But if you've got any questions, just sing out and we'll handle them as we go. The other benefits that we found by shearing more often is that we had 8% more wool. So on top of the increased price per kilo due to length, vegetable matter and tensile strength, there's actually 8% more of it. So when I did the numbers, it was about $7 to shear and roughly $2 to crutch. So we had a $5 gap to make up, and 8% more wool of a higher value. When I did the figures, was about $2 or $3 in front by shearing twice a year. So that was just on the wool front. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. Those numbers would have to be redone with current shearing values, deducting current crutching values. But that's all easily done. But keep in mind that expect a little bit more wool, and we found with the length of our clip that it was a higher price per kilo. The other noticeable wins were the condition score lift on the mothers, lift of 0.6. So if there's 5 condition scores, 0.6 of one condition score is a 12% lift in condition across the mothers, and that also equated to 12% more lambs, and that to me is the big win. So if the wool covers the shearing costs and the user in better nick, and we net 12% more lambs, it's locked into our businesses, just part of the course. So this is about all we've got to cover. Are there any questions? So Russ Davis talks about this really well, and it's a shame he couldn't join us, but he talks about shearing stimulating the appetite. With the appetite they eat more and they produce more. Yeah.
Essentially, it stimulates appetite.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. We didn't actually break down the clips, the 12 month wool and the 6 month wool into their categories. It was a bit of a group value, and so there was a lot more skirtings, a lot more pieces, a lot more cotton wool on the edges of the 12 month wool, particularly when we're getting out to 120 mils. We run into a decent summer or any sort of conditions that creates a bit of cot around the edges. We produce a lot more pieces, which is lower value, whereas just about everything goes into the fleece line when they're shorn at 6 months. There's not time to catch all the VM and all the problems that cot the wool. So it's another benefit really on top of what we've measured that we haven't really got figures on. But yeah, but it's better. And you're right, Bruce. It's, 6 month wool is cleaner and easier to manage.
I can comment on that in our system if you like, Chad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David Gregg, ladies and gentlemen.
No, just on that. Our 6 months shearing, when we went from 12 months to 6 months, we were 1 bale of pieces to 3 bales of fleece wool, and we're now 1 bale of pieces to 7 to 8 bales of fleece wool. So, so it is a big difference.
Yeah. Thank you. You've got an A numbers, yeah. Richard.
Now, whether it's for you or whether it's for Alan and Matt, it's to do with length, with the contracts that are available. I think as far as New Zealand, most contracts are 70 to 100 mils or something like that. How do we fare coming in your case, coming from 65 mils? Is it move to put the contracts to take in this to encourage more shearing twice a year?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the power of the relationship. So we've been dealing with New Zealand Merino for a while to try and find a contract at a length that would suit our 6 month shearing. So as I was saying, the 6 month shearing is locked into our program. It's so easy to have the shearers here to shear instead of crutch and do that every 6 months. It's a really neat program, but it produces that length of wool. And so instead of trying to squeeze that wool through classing into a contract that's looking for 70 plus, we really needed a contract that fitted our program. And so they've been very good to work with, and I think we've got a point now where we've got a 67 mil contract, and that's again coming back to the relationship, finding a brand that can work with that length, understanding our story, and then putting that whole picture together. So yes, early days, but that's exactly the sort of relationship that we're building.
Chad, is there much difference in the length between the 6 months that they read and wearing the 6 months that don't have a lane on?
No, it doesn't seem to be. We actually went down a 5-7 month split, trying to manage the length of the fibre on the back of the lambing and lactation period, but it didn't seem to be so much. It was more after weaning, the effects of recovering from lambing that seemed to have as big an impact as actually lactating itself, there's a delay in the wool getting out of the skin, obviously. So no, we've just gone back to a 6 month split, and we try and stick pretty rigidly to that. There's probably bigger variations in seasonal conditions, probably more to do with nutrition than other things. So there's variations, and there will be every year. And it's not that we hit 65 every year. It's, so dry maiden ewes might be closer to 70 or 75, the better stuff. Twin bearing ewes, in a tougher year, they might be 60, 58 mils. We've stopped really worrying about what the length is so much. It's the process that's more important to us because of the other benefits to do with livestock health and lamb survival.
Chad, is that livestock health thing, is that to do with, like, could that come into that regen to the side of things and pushing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's the story we haven't got to start creating. That's our story, and we've just got to tell it. So the interesting point I didn't make before, with that 12% extra lambs, that was all due to twin lamb survival. The single lamb survival was identical between the 12 month and 6 month shorn ewes. All the gain came in twin lamb survival. So if we're talking about all sorts of ewe mortality, lamb survival, fetus conversion, that whole picture, this 6 month shearing fits very closely with doing that. And then yes, absolutely, that's part of the story we want to communicate.
And a sheep or a ewe or whatever would be healthier, I guess, with less wool.
Yes, yep. Yeah, particularly when the wool's getting very long. And so, you know, the picture we're painting at a genetic level, that whether it's non-mules that attracts people, whether it's 6 months shearing or high reproduction, all of these traits fit together very neatly. And so then capturing that story and communicating it, you know, it's just another leg in that story.
Chad, any feedback from the shearers about they prefer 6 month shearing and the numbers they do? So does it actually work out cheaper per head in the end if they're shearing more?
Yeah, that's probably analysis we should do more closely, but I had the conversation with our contractor about 6 months shearing. I said, well, what are your thoughts? This is where we want to go. And he said, look, we'd rather shear than crutch. So it's a tick in the box for the shearers. So if they're pulling out a good shearing sheep to shear it twice a year in good facilities, then we can't do much more than that.